So I've got, okay. All right, it is 6:30. I'd like to call to order the Board of Public Works and Utilities Committees. It is Tuesday, July 5th. We'll start with roll call. Mayor Kim Smith. Here. Alder Larry Jurassic. Here. Jared Holder. Here. And Karen Marquardt.
Here.
And myself, Steve Knott, I'm also present. Let me know also that in the room, we do have Alder Leon Stokes present as well. Do we have anyone that we should be recognizing on the phone?
Alder Tom Smith and Alder Diane Wolf are also on the Zoom.
So Alders Smith and Wolf are also here online. Okay, with that said, I will take action on minutes from the previous meeting. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion that we accept the minutes from last meeting.
Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Kim to approve the previous meeting's minutes. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Next, we have public input. Anyone who would like to provide public input, please step up to the microphone or raise your hand over the computer so that we can bring you on. I'd like you to identify your name and your address, and you will have 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to do public input? Second call for public input. Anyone online at all?
No, there's not.
Okay, third and final call for public input. Public input is now closed. We'll move on to item number 4, which is sidewalk replacement policy in relation to city-owned boulevard trees. Jared.
Thank you, Alder Knott. This is in relation to our city sidewalk management program. City's been performing this program for, I think this is about the 22nd year where we've actually went around the city and inspect sidewalks and then perform repairs for various items in the city. With that, this year, we're in the Sandalwood neighborhood this year. A lot of mature trees in that area, boulevard trees that have been there for those homes. Those homes were put in the late 80s, early 90s. So those trees are getting to a very mature height. And with that, the did have talked to residents in that area. Actually, this came up originally back in 2015. The actual residents in this neighborhood actually brought forward some concerns with the policy in that time. Back in 2015, the city's policy was that any damage to a city sidewalk, any hazards, any repairs that were needed, the repairs were performed at 100% of the property owner's cost. In 2015, the Common Council went on record to change that policy to actually sharing that cost, 50% property owner, 50% the city. With this tonight, I do have a letter in your packet tonight from Mr. Francis Spindler of 2010 Esther Drive. He's one of the individuals in that neighborhood that has voiced concerns with our city policy regarding the charges for sidewalks for city trees. I'm going to have Mr. Spindler come up and give us a few words here, but we as city staff look at our urban forest and our trees that we've invested in the city and really try to maintain those at pretty much all costs, unless they're diseased or the arborist comes in and tells us that they are to the point that they should be removed for some reason. But in that regard, it does cause the sidewalks to heave in certain areas. Mr. Spindler has one spot that was fixed in 2015. And then again this year, I've got some pictures that I can put on the screen also. But this was brought forward by the neighborhood. So Mr. Chair, if you'd recognize Mr. Spindler, if he wants to come up and give us a little bit or description of what he's describing.
So the chair recognizes Mr. Spindler.
The microphone.
that not on? Oh, thank you. Do I need a microphone? I live at 2010 Esther Drive. I've been a resident of Alaska since 1991. So we purchased that home probably about the time those trees were put in. I've got 2 honey locusts. So sometime in those first 10 years, we replaced sidewalks. 2015, as Mr. Holder mentioned, we did it again. I think it was like 6 sections. I provided pictures of how many large roots came out of there. And then again, 7 years later, I find we're doing it again. And initially when they removed the concrete slabs, I was surprised I didn't see anything, but when they dug deep, they did expose a number of roots that they took out, including into the yard. And there's still roots in the boulevard that I'm concerned with. One of the things I didn't realize until I saw the minutes was that, and while I appreciate we need to maintain the sidewalks for the liability, not only tripping hazards, but my snow removal equipment runs into it. But what I'm asking here is that we appreciate the recognition of the city council in paying for half, but it's city boulevard, city tree, city sidewalk. And I'm asking, along with the other residents, that the city consider whether it's from some of your funds from the COVID Public Works type area or whatever funds you have available to bear this responsibility 100%. We'd also like to have the opportunity to be able to work with the city to pick the trees. It's a very narrow boulevard. The trees are going to continue to do that, recognizing that it's a 7-year cycle. Now I see why. I think that that's a reasonable time, although I wouldn't comment. But if every 7 years, we're all going to be faced with this cost again, I hope to be there for another 20 or 30 years. So that could potentially be 5 or 6 times of replacing the same sidewalks. At some point in the comments from all of the construction crew people was that why aren't we just taking this tree out? Because the roots that they took out this time left about a 12-inch elevation from new sidewalk to the top of the crown of the soil. And whether we can get grass to grow vertically on that space or put in some kind of a small retaining curb is yet to be seen. So at this point, basically, and you can see some of the different pictures there in terms of, in fact, that sidewalk for some reason takes a slight bend there for some reason, but that's my concern. But there you can see the height difference between the new sidewalk and the crown around that tree. I like trees. We got a lot in our backyard. I don't particularly like the honey locust because both in spring and fall, the leaves or the pollen that comes out is kind of a problem. All that yellow locust, it's a small yellow leaves end up in the storm sewers and ultimately plugs up some of the drains, I think, leading to the park. But that's another story. So in summary, we'd like your consideration to bear a little more responsibility on the cost of those replacements. I've added in my one letter that, and whether or not that's available at this meeting or in the future, the administrative costs that Jared's staff goes through in terms of the notices, the communication between hopefully not irate residents like myself, in terms of dealing with questions in the ongoing process. There wasn't really any notice that they put up when they put the barricades up and started taking out the concrete, but that's okay. We knew it was going to happen. But I think the time that they put in to deal with all the other questions, billing, if I don't pay the invoice for that work, it goes on my tax bill and then other entities get involved. And obviously it's not a lot of money, but for some people it's more of a burden than others. So just ask your consideration and the consideration of your finance director and the city council to maybe look at saving everybody's time in terms of that, because recognize it's got to be done, but hopefully the city can take that responsibility completely on itself, and hopefully in the future, as new trees have to be planted, that you get some citizen input as to what those trees might be. So unless you have any questions, I guess that's really all I had to ask of you, the city council and the Board of Public Works. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Spindler. Appreciate it. Yes.
Just I had Kevin run some numbers for me today. So just for this year, we did 1/7 of the city The engineering department marked 268 sidewalks, of which of those 86 had tree-related deficiencies. So about a third, 32% of those. So right now, the bid cost for removal and replacement of the sidewalk is approximately $200. The city currently with the 50% policy, the city paid approximately $8,600. If you wanted to pay all the costs, it would double. So that would be $17,200. So this is just for this year. I do believe this year probably was a little bit stronger on the tree deficiencies found just because of the neighborhoods we were in. It's kind of the right mix of the neighborhoods. But with that, we are already budgeting the money through the capital improvements budget. It's just we would not be recouping the money through the special assessments. So the city would not be bringing those funds back in either as a one-time payment or over 9 years if they elect to do it that way. So just a little numbers for you.
Mayor.
Jared, would it be onerous to track since it's a 7-year program, like if the person had already paid for that section of sidewalk? Because I can see where it would be frustrating if every 7 years they dug the sidewalk up and had to replace it, which will happen irregardless of who's paying the bill. But is that something that would be easy to track or not really?
And we've got lists from previous years, but that would take some sorting and handwork. I'll let Kevin add to that.
I believe it could be done, Mayor, for this program, and you can tell visually the difference in the concrete. But for this one, we don't track anything, like we don't GPS the location. So we could probably go out and figure it out currently when we
Do it
replace
going
one. If we
forward,
can
but
see
not-
moving forward, we could make a note about, either locate them on a GPS system, or we can just make a field note when they're out there replacing, appears to be a double replacement or replacing stone the second time. I have witnessed that as marking it, my engineering aide marked the 2022 sidewalk program last year in the fall. I did not do that, but in my experience, this is the first year I actually handed it off. I had done it the previous, I think, 9 or 10 years of the program. And I personally, yes, have marked sidewalks for repair that were obviously repaired at a previous time.
There was really a lot in this neighborhood of sidewalks. Did you observe that as well, like as proportional to other areas of the city?
Jared was right. Just some of the age of the neighborhood, the trees that were planted, the boulevard width, how they grow, maybe how they're well cared for there. Going in, I know that this neighborhood would have an additional boulevard trees just because the age and they're very mature, a little bit of a narrow boulevard in there for maybe what we'd see for this. There's maybe one more neighborhood that sticks out for me, Wellington Greens off of Krause Road. Even though that one's not newer, that just, I believe, has a lot of maples in there. So there are a lot of horizontal roots. So that's another, when I know I'm going to that one, that's another one that I already know because I've been through the city twice now. Being here, that's another area where we run into the same problem, where maybe a little heavier on boulevard tree damage than maybe other natural causes. But all the other areas in the city, it's more randomness. But at least this one definitely in the Sandalwood neighborhood, I know going in that we're gonna mark maybe a few percentage more boulevard trees just because of the neighborhood itself.
Thank you. For the benefit of the citizens that are here, can you just talk super briefly about how the trees are chosen to be planted in the boulevard and if they would have any input in that process?
When the Sandalwood neighborhood was developed, I don't know if we had a selection currently. Right. We do have a list of approved trees that we would plant in the boulevard. And for like our citizens request program, the citizen is given that list and they are allowed to choose, give us maybe 1, 2, or 3, a couple of options based on availability of the tree and their personal selection. I think always on that list, we'd have somewhere where there'd be some sort of city defined list. I don't think we would let a citizen just plant any X, Y, or Z tree or pick that in the boulevard. We would probably have a city preferred list or something. That's usually how we would handle it.
We do not issue a permit for planting of trees. So there's times where we just all of a sudden end up with a tree also. That wasn't the case here, but we do. And then when the homeowner comes in and builds a new home, they're supposed to pick off the approved list for species in that list. One thing with this neighborhood too is probably at least 1/3, if not 40% of the boulevard trees were removed about 6 years ago due to emerald ash borer. So if the ash trees were still up in the neighborhood, where we would have marked even more sidewalks, I'm guessing, because some of those, I know 15 to 20 years ago, when I was still marking sidewalks, some of those, I marked some of those sidewalks in that neighborhood too, just from the ash trees.
Larry?
Jared, I understand that you're planning ahead with the budget to add money into your account to take care of this project?
So this is a yearly project that's in our capital improvements budget. And we budget every year for all of the cost of all the work to be done. With that, because we've got to pay the contractor for the work and get that work done. The engineering department then in the fall has special assessments that go to the finance department that then are sent out to the property owners, listing what their assessment is for the work that was done. And they can either pay that back in 1 year, or they can pay it back over a 9-year period on their taxes, depending on how much the bill is. So we already budget for all the work, it's just a matter of how much the city's going to get back in to reimburse ourselves for that work.
But that's currently at the half payment, not the full payment.
We currently budget for the whole thing, but we only get half back.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to make a motion here. It's going to be very specific and defined, and I'll get into that later when we get into discussion. And I'd like to make a motion that the city pays the full amount of sidewalk repair costs if damage and or hazards are caused by city-owned trees.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by myself, seconded by Larry. Opening for discussion. Since it was my motion, I'm going to start, I guess, and give my logic behind it, and we'll have a discussion here. So, it's very specific and defined. Historically, I've actually towed a pretty hard line on the sidewalks. I think that the record will show that. I don't like making exceptions because they can become a slippery slope. However, in this particular case, there's another general rule of thumb in most civilized nations that if you break it, you buy it. In this case, I think that our trees are breaking the sidewalk. So I don't think it's fair that if our property is causing the damage, that we should be expecting others to pay the cost of that damage. Especially since we're also not allowing them to take down the tree as an option either. So they're stuck with this city tree that's going to continue to cause damage, and then we're going to continue to pay them. That just doesn't seem to fit the fairness test to me. If we're breaking it, we should buy it. But again, the intent with the motion I just did was that it was very specific and defined, where it only applies to damage caused by city-owned trees. So as any other discussion?
See, what you're saying is for a new person just building, they come and purchase a tree then, or is that?
No, it's the program doesn't change. It's just how we charge them. Everything else is the same. Yeah, there's a very limited motion. It's basically that we will pay the full amount if damage or hazards are caused.
But that's what I'm saying, is if they come and decide which tree they want and purchase that tree and have it planted, is that going to be city-owned or individual?
Well, if it's a tree being planted in a boulevard, my understanding is they don't get a choice. They get a choice on the tree, but they don't get a choice that the tree is going to go there. Is that correct?
So the city, this would only be for a city-owned tree, which would be in the city boulevard. So if you planted a tree behind the sidewalk on your private property and it heaved the sidewalk, the city would not, and we currently do not compensate for trees on private property because they own them. They can take that tree down. They can do whatever they would like. And that's the way we've been enforcing that rule. It's only the city-owned trees. There could be an oddball spot where they're next to a park or something, maybe that would be behind the sidewalk, but 99.9% of them are going to be boulevard trees.
Here.
I have a concern that there could be gray areas where it may or may not have been caused by a tree. I mean, maybe Jared or Kevin could speak to that, like how clear is this going to be? Because seems to me that there's other things that could happen that maybe it seems like it is, but when they dig it up, they find out it's not, or it is. I mean,
I think when the construction happens, we can note it. Yeah. Like this tree is it's obvious that the root is there. I think we'd be able to ascertain it all of the time. Kevin, do you see a problem? I mean,
No, I mean, it's fairly obvious. Normally, my experience doing this, that the sidewalk will heave directly next to the trunk of the tree or 5 feet away. Fairly rarely do I ever go out there and would classify a tree as a boulevard tree lifting if we're 20, 25 feet from the tree. Now, potentially
could
that
happen.
could be a gray area where somebody comes in and, yeah, I think the tree's causing it, but the tree's 30 feet, then we could get into something about somehow verifying that in the field or working with that. But for the most part, for what we're talking about tonight, it's fairly obvious that the abutting sidewalk is in very close proximity to the tree, 5 feet, less than 10, in my experience.
Jared, what's the procedure as far as erosion? Just the opposite. Would the city come in and replace sidewalk at that time?
if it's a city drainage problem or just something the city from the street, if there's doesn't happen very often. It's very limited, but if there's something where it's coming across the handicap ramp, let's say from the street and it's washing something out, it could happen.
But the city pay 100% then, right?
We would if we found it was our problem. Yep.
I just have a quick question. Stephen, are you indicating that this motion would be for just this particular year? Or are you indicating that this motion would be moving forward, we would pay 100%, the city would pay 100%?
My intent would be moving forward, again, only if damage is caused by city-owned trees. And I can restate the motion before we vote on it too, Kim.
And I question that just because of just the logistics of the budget, because we do have, so will it affect the budget, Jared? Wouldn't it have to be for the 2023 budget?
Well, we budget for all the work. It's just how much money do we want to receive back in special assessments?
Do we budget those revenues?
Those revenues
Anticipated revenues?
are budgeted at a generic amount, I think, in the general operating budget.
So I believe so too.
But those revenues wouldn't be, those would be revenues for 2023. They wouldn't be, they'd be coming in this year, but they don't actually come.
Yeah, so typically that by the time we actually receive those, well, it would be in the end of 2022.
Some of it would be, yeah.
Some of it would be the end of 2022, unless they chose to have it go on assessment, then it would not come in until, then it would be allotments to the
Right.
next.
Well, and I mean, I'm concerned because when we do the budget, $8,600 does make a difference, as you well know, Steve.
Sure.
So I just want to be careful about, number one, how and who determines that the tree, I logistically don't have a problem with it. It's just these things, like who is going to determine it for sure, what defines it, and then how the budget is affected. I really feel like it should be something that becomes effective in 2023 for that budget cycle.
And then if you feel be more
Is-
comfortable just voting on case by case then?
Well, not case by case, but for right now, they've already they're halfway through or a certain percentage through the project. So then they have to backtrack and try to figure out which ones were due to trees and which ones weren't.
Well, I think the city engineers could make that determination. It could always be contested, but
We have it listed
We do have the list.
field when we do the inspection.
Okay.
If we believe there's a boulevard tree, we mark it. Some are obvious, sometimes we question it and come back, but during the inspection, we have all the documentation for this year, which repairs we believe were caused by a boulevard tree. And that was actually indicated on the letter the resident received there, as we do indicate that yes, the boulevard tree is there, because then in the potential cost, we do show that cost split.
Because you determined we would split the cost with them.
Yeah, I guess the one caveat here is the cost split only comes in if the city does the work. Just like any other assessment, when we do the assessment in the fall, I now do them in the fall so that we can mail letters in December. That gives the homeowner plenty of time to review it and potentially find a contractor, because we have to give them 60 days by ordinance to make the repair to the sidewalk. So how we do this now is we send it out in December. It helps us for budgeting at the end of the year. When I do them October, November, we have an idea of how many repairs we might need for one of the last push on the capital improvements project. And then we say in the letter, you have to have the repair done by the 1st of June, basically giving the homeowner April and May for their 60 days per the ordinance. So there still is a point where the homeowners, all of them, they receive the letter, are given the option for them to repair the sidewalk at their cost. So some of the times people may repair some of these currently at their own expense and thus are not eligible, because it was told to me that the city would not cut a private citizen a check on this program. They had to have the city do it. We would then bill them half, but it is the city's position. We're not going to go halvesies and then let them do private work and pay that. They have to do it under the city's program for it.
Sure.
I do have some budget information from this year's budget. For 2020, the budgeted amount for sidewalk assessments was 53. For 2019, it was budgeted $5,300. We brought in almost 40,000. In 2020, we budgeted 7,000, brought in 24,000. In 2021, we budgeted 30,000 in revenue, but the budget was printed on 10/12. So at that point, we had only brought in $6,700. But that, I'm sure more revenue came in after that, because a lot of these don't go out. We usually don't send them out till about the middle of September. They're not due till the end of October. So there probably was more revenue brought in. And then this year we budgeted revenue at 30,000 again. And we performed.
I have Jared, can I ask you another question quick? So do you have any thoughts on how much you feel? I know we did come up with the value of 8,600, I think you said was 50%, but that's all of the sidewalk assessments, right? That's not just those that would be due to tree roots. So do we have any idea of what the value would be on just those pieces that would be tree root, due to tree roots?
Just ran the numbers. You said it was based on 1/3, right?
1/3 were tree related.
Right. So that would have been 27, 16, and 20K over 19.
So it'd be another
20,
3
21.
grand roughly. So it'd be about 11,600-ish, something
I
like.
think our total sidewalk program this year came in at about 100,000 just for the contractor to do the work. So I'm sure we're gonna bring in, because we actually bid out more work this year than previous years even. Normally, we're only in that 200 range for deficiencies. That's about what you've been running probably.
Right now, yeah, right. For repair IDs, we're only going off of the actual repair ID. At each repair ID, you could have 1, 2, 3 sections of sidewalk. So I don't do the IDs on some sort of square footage. It's just at this repair ID, we had 268 individual repair locations this year. Of that, 86 of them we felt were caused by boulevard trees. So potentially the number Jared listed for the potential 8,600, that would be the low end of it, meaning there's only one sidewalk stone at each repair. So that 8,600 would be the low end minimum we'd have to pay. Potentially the city would potentially lose revenue in excess of that, because some of the locations may have multiple sections. Normally, when we get to a tree, we almost always take at least 2 stones just for balancing, blending in that offset that the root has caused. It normally will push 2 up at a joint. So, I could probably easily say Jared's number there. We could almost double it. To about 17,000 on a minimum, that the city may lose off in revenue for potentially a year like this.
I'm a little confused now, but but it's still approximately 1/3 of the revenues that we would lose.
1/3 of the stones that we marked were tree related. 1/3.
Right, as far as the assessment, so as I guess called revenue, shouldn't call it that. Yeah, the assessments for the reimbursement would be, we'd be losing about 1/3 of it. Yeah, so, and I certainly understand the budget concerns 100%. But I mean, this is where we have conflicting interests. If we have a budget and then we also have fairness, I guess. Because again, we're not allowing people to cut down trees. So they're stuck with the boulevard trees the city has planted. And yet they are causing damage on a reoccurring basis. And then we're charging them to fix the damage that the trees we're forcing them to keep are causing. So that's where I have kind of a moral dilemma on this. I don't think it's right that we do it. It's and we have to work it out in the budget. Mayor.
Jared, do you know what other, or Kevin, other surrounding municipalities do as far as boulevard trees and sidewalk replacement?
We did not look, and I believe when this was last talked in 2015. Yes, I did do a look at similar size communities, roughly 20,000. And we did have some charts for that at the 15 meeting. And I know we also looked at what the city of La Crosse did at the time also. So we did do a look. And if I remember back on that, it is all ends of the spectrum, no forgiveness. The resident has to pay for it all. Some of it is total forgiveness. There's 50-50 splits. So there did not seem, if I remember from 2015, to be a general consensus in the state on how a municipality does certain parts of that ordinance related to sidewalk. We saw it at all ends of the spectrum.
I want to recognize Mr. Spindler again. Seems he has something else to add here, so come on up. Again, state your name again, just for the record, so.
Microphone goes off.
It's a
It's a
great-
Spindler, 2010 Esther Drive. I appreciate that opportunity to add one or two more thoughts. Directly across the street from me, Rita and Troy Schumann, they have like 6 concrete pads where they were replaced and there's no obvious large tree. They had some trees removed 7 years ago there. The new trees that are planted are tiny saplings still. That's one issue where and I appreciate the motion that Mr. Knott made, but that question on did the tree cause this, then digging up the roots from where there's no obvious tree, that's one question. 2, there's at least 2 accessibility cuts in the end of the block where there's no obvious trees, but those accessibility ramps were replaced. And if that was my property and I didn't have a city tree there, but I'm still being charged for accessibility ramps, which are much larger, 2 or 3 sections of concrete in a different sense. And thirdly, I'm not an accountant, but on the question of fairness budgeting, is it possible that residents can be billed next year and make that an obligation for city payment? Assets, liabilities, however you work that type of thing. But you would still the cost now, but you've moved the billing forward so that hopefully our efforts here aren't wasted to the future. But maybe by charging me into 2023, you won't charge me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think this agenda item is on boulevard trees and not on the ramps.
Just as a side note, the city pays all costs for the corner ramps.
Oh, you do
Yeah,
anyway.
We already
Okay.
do that as city policy, yeah.
But yeah. Any other? Yes, Kevin.
Steve, just for clarification, so the board members know, we'd be talking about this potential change moving forward, right? Like for Mr. Spindler, he received the letter in December. Those sidewalks have been replaced already to date. So that'd be just thing, or is that something where the project is still ongoing this year? Would that be a determining point of when it would come into effect for that?
Yeah, again, it opens a whole can of worms if we're gonna go retroactively, because then how far back do we go? Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, so back to my two main points. I think the first one has been disproven because they're already making the determination if it's a boulevard tree or not when they're deciding that there's a 50-50 split. But the second one remains with the budgetary concern. So I guess I would just ask that if we are going to move forward with this motion, that we have it be the policy go into effect on January 1st of 2023, so that this year can finish as the people have already been notified and, you know, the work has been done and et cetera, so that we're not doing anything retroactively. Would that be manageable?
Sure, and again,
Kevin?
this will have to go to the common council anyway, but yeah. Yeah,
Well, it would be, but
Kevin.
just for clarity, right? I plan on doing the inspections that'll be constructed in 2023 in October or November of 2022. That'd be something for clarification made with the city
Clarity.
attorney about how you would do that. Is it the inspection date or is it the construction date? If we would move it, just for everybody's knowledge, so if we're not back here next year at this time about the same thing, the inspections for next year's program will actually occur either in October or November of 2022. That'd be a question maybe for the city attorney about if it was enacted January 1 of 2023. Is it the
Or we could
inspection
say
date of the
for
construction, or that motion potentially would then include?
I guess I
We
would.
could say for construction in 2023, I think.
Ju-
Based
just
on
so the board
assessments
knows.
levied, assessments levied in 2023, right?
Um,
And beyond. Because they do the work first, make the determination, and then they send out the assessment. So I mean, you can't, you have a pretty good guess, but I would think that until you lift the old concrete up for the repairs, you can't definitively say that's true to the roots from the tree, right? There'd be obvious ones, but yeah.
Some are obvious, right? Some to be honest, we mark, it's close, we give the discount. We do ask, as Mr. Spindler was saying, we do ask the contractor when they're setting the forms to take a spade shovel and push it in the ground to see if they can feel a root. And if they do feel a root, we then try to remove it. But even some of the things that we may mark as a boulevard tree, they may not feel that root because maybe that root is 2 feet or 3 feet below the surface and it's pushing the soil up. But we do, Mr. Spindler probably saw that they take out quite a few roots as part of this. So we do ask them to do that, you know, but some of that determination, sometimes they put the shovel in where we think a tree did it and they never feel anything. So we just grade it back level and move on.
Well,
I just think the length of this conversation
yep.
gives credit to the complexity of the issue. On the surface, it seems like it's easy. We do, I mean, I value those boulevard trees and also have compassion for a citizen who may be replacing their sidewalk at multiple intervals. So I think that maybe we need to take a little more time to consider this issue before making a decision.
Yeah, I agree. I'm thinking I might want to try to withdraw my motion, but, and basically have it refer back to the staff for some recommendations for the future on how to do this. But we'd want to have it on the agenda, I would think, by September.
So that we can make any budgetary adjustments, because we wouldn't probably want to wait until 2023 anyway.
Yeah,
Budget process.
I wasn't understanding the timing of this. These assessments have already gone out. Yeah, I think that's retroactive is very
We
dangerous.
haven't physically sent the assessments out yet. They've been notified of the work and the work's been completed,
Oh, all
most of the project, but the assessments actually won't go out until October.
right. So we could still
Still-
delay this.
I still don't want to make a change in the middle of the process when people have been notified. I mean, obviously they'll be happy, but
Yeah. Well, either way, if I withdraw my motion and Larry is willing to withdraw his second, we could refer it back to the staff and they can come up with recommended options, and it may or may not include affecting the 2022 assessments. I don't know. Yeah.
I think the options are in front of you.
Yeah, but I think we're going to want to have a legal look at it too. And Amanda's not here right now, so. So anyway, I would like to withdraw my motion at this time with the understanding that staff will take a look at this and come up with some options no later than the September meeting.
Can staff also, excuse me, can staff also find out how many people are currently paying for last year's or whatever? Go back and just give us a number as far as, how many people are we gonna annoy? Because we've changed it now from, well, you paid, next year, nobody's paying, so.
Well, that's the danger of going retroactive.
Yep.
Well, how far back do we go now? So, yeah. Okay, anyway, I've recommended my motion be withdrawn. I don't know if you still want to keep yours or not. Your second?
Yep, I'll say it.
So you want to withdraw it?
Yeah, we'll withdraw.
Withdraw the second. Okay, so the motion's withdrawn with the understanding staff will come back with this as an agenda item no later than September. Could be in August, but definitely want to have a legal look at it as well. So, okay. All right, let's move on.
Steve, will that be back to us or back to the whole committee?
It would come back to us
Board of Public Works.
and then to the common council. Yeah. Okay,
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you for
Mr.
your input.
Spindler and the neighbors that came in.
all right. Agenda item 5, state municipal agreement with Wisconsin Department of Transportation for State Trunk Highway 157 Main Street. Jared.
Thank you. This is a project that's been a long time coming. City staff have been in communication with the Wisconsin DOT for almost 10 years now on programming of the replacement of the pavement on Main Street. So this would be the pavement replacement along Main Street, which is State Trunk Highway 157 from Fifth Avenue, right out front of City Hall, down to 17th Avenue. In your packet tonight, you do have a state municipal agreement proposed. In this agreement, the typical state policy is that the city or the municipality would pay 25% of design cost. DOT would pay 75% of design costs. This is the same model we have followed on other projects with the DOT, such as State Highway 35 downtown and to the north and south of that area. With that, then the construction portion in 2029, the city would pay for 100% of any construction costs in relation to the water main or sanitary sewer that's replaced. And then if there's any parking lanes that are reconstructed, we would have to pay the parking lane construction also. So in your packet tonight, under the state municipal agreement, there's a table. They are estimating the design costs at 500,000. So of which 25% would be municipal funds, which would be 125,000. This is going to take, multiple years to get designed. It'll be 5 years before all the design is done. So we don't have to budget all that in 1 year. Under construction, they are estimating the roadway at 3.5 million, the parking at 150,000 currently. And we did supply, city staff supplied an estimate for the water main and sanitary sewer. Just as a note, the water main in this section of most of the street is from the 1930s. So we really want to get it replaced. We have valves that are failing. The main itself is not in the greatest condition. So this is a welcome project recommended by staff. So I guess I'm recommending approval of the state municipal agreement in your packet tonight.
I move that we approve the state municipal agreement with the DOT for State Trunk Highway 157 Main Street as described.
I'll
Oh.
second.
Okay, motion made by Mayor Kim, seconded by Karen. Any discussion? I just want to, I think it's probably obvious to everybody, but if we go forward and approve this, we just need to understand that this commits us to a 2029 capital improvements obligation of 2.3 million. That's the way I'm reading this. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, all right. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 6, La Crosse County Solid Waste Department Impact Report. Jared.
I've included in your packet tonight the Solid Waste Department Impact Report, kind of their annual report. This was given out at their annual meeting, which was held at Stony Creek Inn about 2 weeks ago. It's kind of an informative report. There's a lot that goes on at the landfill solid waste facility that a lot of our residents and citizens don't realize what's happening out there. There's a lot of value that happens out there. They're a very good facility. They follow the solid waste hierarchy, trying to reuse, recycle, do all of those things out at that facility. Just going through a couple of things, the 2021 highlights, you can see that they had 4 bullet points out there. They worked on host agreements with Onalaska and La Crosse. They increased their household hazardous waste hours, which the city participates in with a fee every year. They removed their leachate tank out at the landfill, and they worked on a feasibility study for an addition to the landfill, which will be the last addition to the landfill. Also, you can see what their revenues and expenses were. They are actually keeping money, building their fund balance so they can do the next cell construction with cash on hand. They're not going to be borrowing for their next work on the next solid waste cell. And then for 2022, you can see some of the things they've got in there for 2022 that they've got planned. And I know they're working on those. Same thing with the final permitting for the landfill cell. I think they have received that. So they are going to be moving forward with building of that new cell. So I guess it's just information. Thought it'd be something nice to pass along to the board. And if you got any questions, I can convey them on to the director, Jad Stillwell, or we could I can even invite him in if you want, but they're always more than happy to come in. If you ever want to go to the annual meeting, that is a very good function that they talk about landfill activities and the solid waste department in general, and then they have tours after that. So if you've never seen we're on a tour of either the XL facility that's on French Island for refuse derived fuel, electricity, or the landfill itself, those are both good tours.
I'll move that we file the 2021 La Crosse County Solid Waste Department Impact Report.
I'll second.
Okay, movement to file by myself, seconded by Jared. Any discussion? Any questions for Jared? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Number 7, professional services for City Hall, police, fire, exterior building assessment. Jared.
Thank you. In your packet tonight, I do have 2 proposals for a building envelope survey of City Hall. As you know, over the last few years, we've had some issues with water intrusion into the building. The city budgeted through our capital improvements budget and installed a new roof on this building. That was approximately 2 summers ago, right? Yeah, 2 summers ago. Invested in a new roof for the building, and we still have some water intrusion issues, even with the new roof on. With that, the city had a contractor come in, remove some of the bricks on the outside of the building, and looked at the construction methods and found that some of the construction methods may lead to some of the water intrusion with our brickwork. Also, our building staff, Brian Babish, has really took a work at trying to caulk some areas, work on some areas, work on trying to get that water intrusion to not happen. Also, then last summer, the city actually budgeted for and actually did some improvements to City Hall as far as tuck pointing and caulking of control joints in the building. So that led us into the 2022 capital improvements budget. We put a placeholder in the budget of $10,000 to do a survey of needs for City Hall. That on the outside of the building, because we just did not know what to budget for, what was a priority, what needed to be done. With that, we contacted HSR, architectural firm out of La Crosse that's done a few city buildings. And they actually referred us to the 2 architectural firms that are in your packet tonight based upon more expertise in doing a survey of needs for the building. Both are in your packet tonight. We have two kind of very different quotes here. The first quote was from the Specialty Engineering Group, and their proposed fee was $4,800 to do the survey. Their survey is going to be a walk-around survey of the building. They would submit us a report. They did not make a visit to the site when we asked for proposals. I think we're going to get a very generic report. That's I worry about the level of detail after discussing it with the building staff. Second quote is from the Insight Consulting Architects. That quote was for $21,250. They would actually visit the building, also do the walk around, go on the roof, remove some of the brick like we have done before to find problem areas, look at actual construction methods, give us a report, and they would actually give us a capital improvement plan with a prioritization of what needs to be done in what order. This would be very beneficial for city staff and that preparing our capital improvement budget in concert between the engineering department and the building section of the department of the Park and Rec department. Just trying to know what is out there and what needs to be done. Like I said, we did budget $10,000, but that was a placeholder number. We did not have a specific, hadn't contacted anyone for that number. So we do have the 10,000 in 2022 capital improvements budget. We do have funds from the 21 capital improvement budget savings that have been, are still in the 21 capital improvement budget that could be put towards this. In talking with Brian, and Brian's here tonight, and I may even have him come up to the podium if that's okay, because he had discussions with both of these two firms, but there was a visible and significant difference in the second firm for the $21,250, and that's the one that we feel as staff we're going to get the best report. You know, we're probably going to have, you got a $10 million building here, and you probably need $500,000 of repairs. So if someone makes the wrong recommendation on the report, it could, you know, that the extra money you saved on the report could be small compared to what is in the report. So I guess with that, I'd open up for questions, or Brian's available.
Brian, why don't you come up?
Want the mayor had a
I just have
question.
an
correct?
easy question while Brian's walking up here. So if we were to decide to go with one of these firms, when would they be able to complete this by? Just thinking about the cycling of the capital improvement budget.
Brian can answer that question too.
You know, he didn't give me a firm date, the gentleman that came and spent time with me here. But he knew that we were looking at doing something to be able to start this process, hopefully in the next budget cycle. So in dealing with that, he knew that we were going to be looking for some thought process by the middle of July.
The Insight consulting
Yeah.
person.
So Mr. Wick and I did have a conversation with the first consultant firm, did kind of a Zoom meeting with him.
Which one are we talking here?
The
Specialty.
Specialty.
Engineering.
Yep. And would he do the things and give us a budget report? I'm sure he would, and I know that that's part of their game plan is to do that. I had some questions about a report that he actually gave us to look at that he had done for another company. And to me, I kept questioning the fact that it was kind of a like a facade type of a report. I want to know what was wrong inside of our building, not what was wrong on the outside of the building. I mean, if there's a crack in the bricks, we can see that. And he talked like, yes, we would be able to do that, but he was going to do that by looking at our plans and the couple of spots where we had taken bricks out, but not any more detail. The other gentleman that when he came out and spent time with us, when Stephen came, he spent, I thought he was going to spend maybe 15 or 20 minutes walking around with me. It ended up being probably closer to 45 minutes to an hour. And we looked at things, you know, much more deep basis of just what's expansion cracks in the building now, and what his thoughts were about replacing and the process and the thought process of how that came about and where in a 20-year plan, all those things should happen. He actually liked what he saw on the roof project when we were up on the roof looking at the building. Because I pointed out the question of this hallway where we had some water up top of the mailboxes. And his comment as soon as he saw it was, it's the same problem there as you have up on top by the administrative offices and the engineering offices. It's the same problem that we have up there. We have that same problem here. It happened the day we had the 5 inches of rain in 40 minutes. And he said, we would give you an answer to all those questions by their process, what they would do by looking around at the building.
Here.
I'm comfortable then to go ahead and make a motion that we secure. Try to say the
It's like
right one now.
consulting our.
Insight Consulting Architects to do some consulting for Unalaska City Hall Police Fire, exterior of the building at a cost not to exceed $21,250. I'd like to also ask that when we enter into this agreement, that we have a firm understanding of when we expect the report to be delivered, so that it's in a timely manner that it can get into our capital improvements.
Do you want to set a date on that
Schedule.
now?
I'll defer to Jared for that, and he can figure that out.
And I'm in the conversation with him, I'm not sure, I mean, he knows that it's something that we want to do timely. I know that his firm right now, in the conversation we're having, he was working with the University of Wisconsin and at the state of Wisconsin on some projects in the city of Madison at this time also. So kind of the same idea, same envelope problem that other buildings were having, they were doing the same processes there. So he knows it would be timely, that we'd want a timely project done. And I'm sure that those other folks are at the same boat. So I don't think that he would drag his feet for, not holding us to.
I just don't see that specifically in the
Right, right.
proposal, so I just want to mention it as a note.
Mhm.
And then also say that the funding will be provided through the 2022 $10,000 budgeted there, and the additional needed funds would come from the 2021 capital improvement budget balance, for the record.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion to approve the assessment with Insight for 21,250 with the additional requirements as stated by Mayor. And seconded by Larry. Any discussion?
From staff standpoint, we'll work on the timelines and make sure we get something that we can, if we get into the capital improvement budget, have something by the October meeting at the latest, so that way we could actually have good numbers we can put into that budget at that time.
Well, I mean, step one of,
Alternatively, we pick a number and then
Well, yeah.
backwards.
Yeah.
step one of the problem solving is identify the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am more convinced that we will have a more likely result of identifying the problem and not another symptom if we go with Insight. So I have no problem with that myself. So, yeah. All right, any other
The
discussion?
difference would be basically. Sorry about that. I have a new addition today. Hearing aids, and they
Is
gotta
it
go through this.
working? Is it working well for you or not?
Yeah, a little bit. Pain in the-
Maybe there's a learning curve.
It runs through the phone, so. The point I'm trying to make is that I like this idea a lot better, because with the other company, it's like getting a drive-by on appraisal, and instead of actually going to the house and seeing the appraisal. So I'd rather see us pay a little bit more for it than just have, we'll do it for $5,000,
Their comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Number 8, state municipal agreement with Wisconsin Department of Transportation for Midwest Drive Surface Transportation Program Urban Project. Jared.
In your packet tonight, I have the proposed state municipal agreement for the Midwest Drive project. The city did apply for and receive Surface Transportation Program Urban Funds, STPU. These funds are allocated through the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, every 2 years based upon what the funding levels are. We did receive funding for this project that we had applied for. This funding must be used on a collector or higher street, so we can't use it on a residential street. So it's got to be a collector or higher. So things such as Sand Lake Road, Wilson Street, Oak Forest Drive, Midwest Drive, Theater Road, East Main, streets like that. In your packet tonight, you can see once again, there's a table with the estimated costs in that table. The city did budget for part of the design in its 2022 capital improvements budget and has started moving forward with the design of this project. The design will be 100% locally funded. And in your packet tonight, you can see that that is estimated at $105,760. The construction portion of the project will be funded at 80-20. So there's a total project construction costs, including construction engineering and state review, of $939,510, with federal funds of $751,608, with a city cost of $187,902. We are looking at this project right now when the state municipal agreement came out of possibly being 2025, but we're looking at possibly even building it in 2024. So also on a side note, not directly related to this agreement, but we also did apply for another companion project at Theater Road and PH and received STP urban funding, but we actually gave that funding back because we actually got another funding source called Local Road Improvement Program discretionary funding. And that funding we can let locally, so we can do that as a local engineering project. These project STP urban projects must be bid through the state letting system. So typically there's more, our designs cost more because there's more environmental documentation, there's more design work, there's more specifications, and the bidding costs typically go up because it has to go through the state system. So we actually, due to that, use the other funding source for the local road improvement money. That one we actually competed statewide for and got that. So we've been fortunate that we've received some of these grant projects. Moving forward, I think with the infrastructure law that was passed, there's going to be more STP urban funding coming, and hopefully we can situate ourselves to hopefully bring some of that forward also. So staff's recommending approval. Once again, as Alder Knott stated on the other commitment, we are committing to finishing out the design in the 2023 capital improvements budget and construction costs when this comes through the capital improvement budget.
I move that we approve the state municipal agreement with the DOT for the Midwest Drive Surface STP urban project as described in our packet.
I'll second. Motion by Mayor to approve, seconded by myself. Discussion. And yeah, you just mentioned it, Jared, again, we just go in with eyes open when the budgets come in. So in 2023, we're going to be obligated to this 105,760. And in 2024 or 2025, it's an additional 187,902 that will be obligated to commit in out of those capital improvement budgets. We won't have any wiggle room if this goes through approved. Just gotta be aware of that. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 9. Change order number 2 for the 2021 utility project. Jared.
In your packet, we have the proposed change order number 2. This is for the 2021 utility project, which has been completed. This was the 2nd Avenue Southwest portion of the project. We do have 4 items in the proposed change order. We are closing out the contract, so that's the reason we're bringing this forward. Item A was for erosion control mat. We got late in the season, so we wanted to add an erosion control mat because the seed was not going to germinate. That was at a cost of $3,052.50. Item B was additional 6-inch 45-degree bends. We needed to get the water main put back together down by the railroad tracks due to various items in the way. We had to bend the water main around. That was 9 fittings for a total cost of $3,555. Item C was for 8 additional 45-degree bends for the water main. Again, this is actually in the same area as the 6-inch water main down by Northwest Hardwoods. We had 4 fittings, came to a total of $2,200. And then item D was when McCabe was actually jack and boring with their subcontractor. They're down due to the BNSF Railroad having to locate and mark their track signal wiring. Per requirement of the flagger would not let us go forward without that. That total came in at $6,386, and we negotiated that with the contractor to split the cost for a total of $3,193. We are proposing a change order number 2 increase, total amount of $12,000 even and 50 cents. There are funds within the 2021 capital improvement project for this change order within the prices the funds we had budgeted for this change utility project.
Mayor.
What did we budget for this project? How does the final cost compare?
It's under I don't have the exact number, but I know it's under
I think,
the,
Just, yeah.
Yeah, even with all the approved change orders for the project, Mayor, the project would come in $40,000 under the original approved amount. Even with the change orders amount, we will still be saving money on the overall project.
I move that we approve this change order number 2 for the project with a net increase of $20,050.
$12,000.50.
$12,000.50.
I have motion to approve $12,000.50 for the change order by Mayor Kim and seconded by Larry. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 10, change order number 1 for 2022 utility project.
in
Jared.
your packet is the 2022 utility project proposed change order number 1. We have 2 items. These items were things that have come up in the last few months here. With that, we did on the 2022 utility project, we did have the stormwater area of that contract under budget by a relatively large amount, more than enough to cover these change orders in that contract. So we went ahead with this work. We had Gerke Excavating go out to a sinkhole on South Kinney, item A. We had the road going down and we couldn't figure out where it was going. There's an old storm sewer pipe, but we needed a bigger excavator than the one the city had. So we did go out and dig that up and put a ready mix cap where we found that it was failing. That was $3,414.71. And then also Gerke Excavating, which is under the city contract, was also performing work in the Grandview Estates subdivision that's going in. We had them go up and do some repairs to the Crestwood Estates development in that area, just with the steep slopes and things that we had going on. We didn't want to get on top of things before they got to the point of being larger problems. So we hired Gerke to go out there, spend the day mobilizing out there for a cost of $4,720.80. Once again, larger excavator was not something that we have in-house to be able to go out and do the work with. So A and B is a net increase in this change order of $8,135.51. And as I stated, we do have funds in the 2022 utility project budget to cover these under the stormwater section.
Mayor.
I have a question. So under this item B, is that,
Out of warranty,
pardon me?
out of warranty.
Isn't that the one that we just took over from
The completion, Kevin can add to this, but the completion date, the acceptance date was a little over 2 years ago already.
Yeah.
That what you're,
Yeah, no, actually, Mayor, Jared's right. That project started in 2019. We accepted it in 2020. The contractor and developer went out there last year as part of a 1-year warranty
Yeah,
work
we did
and
it.
did do some repairs to this pond already. And then we're back in there 9 months after that repair. So this project has probably been out of warranty now for almost 10 months. And the
Do you,
contractor,
do you anticipate that it's stable now?
yes, I would actually say that Hillside would have been considered stable when we made these repairs. We were repairing here, some ruts, trying to stay ahead of it, not making a 2-foot rut, become a 10-foot rut in the next storm. So while there was some rutting that we repaired here, this could be almost considered maybe a maintenance thing, just the size of that slope that feeds down into that pond. I would assume the city will be out there every 3 to 5 years, repairing some sort of rut, just updated maintenance, like we do at a lot of our stormwater facilities, cleaning out sediment from the pond, nuisances, animals. Heavy storms do create rutting in some of our ponds, which we have to go out and fix from time to time. So this was probably more normal wear and tear that this pond will see.
Move that we approve change order 1 from the 2022 utility projects. And the amount is, I'll try to say it correctly this time, $8,135.51.
Second.
A motion to approve by Mayor Kim, seconded by Larry. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 11, change order number 1 for 2022 tennis pickleball court renovation project. Jared,
The 2022 tennis pickleball court renovation project proposed change order is in your packet tonight. We have one item. Item A was additional 177 lineal feet of armor patch crack repair. Once they got on site and they were going over the tennis court, they added more crack repair once they actually got physically doing the work. That was at a proposed cost of $4,071. Just as a side note, the project cost was, any costs on this is split with the Onalaska School District. So the school district, as part of their reimbursement, will be covering half of the change order. So there are funds within the 2022 capital improvement budget to cover this, the city's half of the proposed change order.
So 4,000 is our half or not?
4,000 is the total. Our half will be $2,035.50.
I'll make a motion that we approve change order number 1 for the 2022 tennis pickleball court renovation project, not to exceed $2,035.50.
I just have a question. I didn't.
I'm sorry, I should have looked first.
Oh, no, that's okay.
All right.
I'm approving it, but the Gullickson courts are considered pickleball, or you're just lumping tennis and pickleball together in the title?
The project was bid out doing the tennis court and the pickleball courts in the
Okay.
park. So it was combined projects. That's, it was called tennis.
Okay, I was like, whoa, there's.
Yeah,
pickle
yeah, no, there's no
courts there
pickle,
now.
no
They're
pickleball,
taking
but
over.
we were doing both at the same one project. So instead of bidding 2 projects, we lumped. it.
Okay, that makes sense.
And those pickleball courts are nice.
And just as a side note, if we can get the motion for the whole 4,071 with a noting that the city's only paying 2,000, because that we need to change the contracts.
Well, it hadn't been seconded yet, so I'll go ahead and withdraw my motion. I'll make a new one that I move that we approve the 2022 tennis ball pickleball court renovation change order number 1 to the sum of $4,000 and $4,071 with the understanding that the school district will be paying half.
Second.
Okay, motion by myself, seconded by Mayor Kim. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Last item on the Public Works portion is pay estimates. We have no updates, so it's these 10 items.
And then the 10 in your packet tonight.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the Public Works monthly pay estimates for July dated July 5th, 2022, 10 items.
I'll approve, or I'll second it.
Okay, motion by myself, seconded by Karen. Any discussion?
Yeah, why didn't we pay off the 53 cents?
I tell you what, that's I actually held that one for a month till we had other DOT ones going in. So it actually gets lumped into the other ones, but they won't move it around because it's different. I don't know how we got billed 53 cents.
We did have discussion about it.
Yeah, we did.
previously, and- But
Yeah, but the amount of time that you spent discussing it was
Yeah.
probably 15 times
Right.
more than 53 cents.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
I
I-
Opposed? Motion passes. That finishes off the agenda for the Board of Public Works portion. We now move on to the utilities portion. Item number 13 is there are no reports, which moves us on to number 14, which is I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second.
Motion to adjourn by Larry, seconded by Karen. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Time is 7:46. You got a couple minutes, Mayor?